Hi, I'm Haeju, and today I want to talk about Korean culture, especially nationalism and identity, based on my own experience. In David class, we learned about many differences between Eastern and Western cultures, and we also talk about several characteristics of Korean culture. Among those, what really stood out to me was Korean nationalism. Since I'm what you call the Korean, I grow up being taught that we are a single ethnic group and that things like a 단군 신화 are the foundation of who we are. But at the same time, the elementary school I went to had a lot of multicultural students, and I never thought that was strange. Even though I learned that Koreans come from one root, I naturally accepted without even noticing that Korea is actually made up of people from many different roots. As I got older, though, I started feeling suffocated by the idea of Korean identity. Things like a strict hierarchy, the pressure to always be polite, the high context communication, and the culture that doesn't easily accept differences began to feel like they didn't match who I am. And of course, I know from David class that these cultural traits have historical reasons, including colonial rule, but knowing that didn't erase the discomfort I felt. For me, I want to speak my mind even to adults. I prefer bright and colorful clothes, more neutral tones. I think age is just a number when you take on new challenges. I think living without dating is totally fine, and I don't think there's anything wrong with dating whoever you want. But I also know this idea don't always line up with that. People think of just typical Korean value. Like David said, a culture needs some kind of common ground, and Korea still hasn't fully reached that point yet. But what's interesting is that most of my friends think the same way I do. They're freer, more open-minded than before, and they try to respect others' life without interfering. The concept of the Jong hasn't disappeared, but I feel like it's being expressed differently now. Before, Jong sometimes meant stepping into someone's personal space or pushing them to fit the mold. But now it feels more like showing care while keeping the respectful distance. So, what I want to say is this. If this atmosphere continues, and if our generation becomes the people with social power, the mainstream, then I really think Korea will change a lot. Just like how people used to wear hanbok every day, but now rarely do, or how people used to live in traditional houses, but now live in apartments, change has always happened and is still happening. And we're the ones driving that change. Everyone who lives in Korea is part of it. I also know Korea went through colonization and dictatorship, and these experiences reinforced the identity of being a single ethnic group. But today, Korea has a strong global presence, and as a result, people's mindset are shifting. I think we are living better lives than before, and I think our society now holds more exclusive values than used to. To be Korean, things like blood or family lineage don't matter. What matters is your passport color and how you see your own identity. A woman in her 20s whose parents are not Korean, but whose identity is Korean and has a Korean passport, and she's Korean. A woman in her 20s who doesn't go to college, has a job, has a same-sex partner, and has very short hair, but she's also Korean. The idea of typical textbook Korean, like a Korean, might actually be an illusion. We all have our own unique trait, and Korean society is slowly accepting that, because we all have different identities. I know this sounds a little bit naive, but I'm still hopeful. Not because I'm blindly optimistic, but because people are actually trying. What I loved most I went to Australia was seeing so many people in wheelchair on the streets. In just 1 year there, I saw more wheelchair users than I had seen in my entire life in Korea. It might take a long time for perceptions about disability to change in Korea, but I think that if more of us starting thinking differently, culture will eventually change too. We are trying to accept our friends as they are, trying not to ask people with darker skin where are you from, and trying not to be patronizing toward others. These might be small personal efforts, but they matter. As long as these efforts continue, Korea will keep changing and ultimately will be one shaping what Korean culture becomes. Everyone living in Korea together. So, today I talked about Korean culture based on what we learned in David class. Thanks for listening and watching, and I hope we can watch how Korea continue to change together. Bye!